There's so much money that it needs to work with, and so it needs results. So there's pressure from the top to build counterterrorism cases. That pressure flows down to field offices, such as the one in Portland, and the agents in those field offices are then pressuring their informants, and there are thousands of informants now working counterterrorism, to find people. And in turn, these informants are also incentivized by money, by working up criminal charges, that they're looking for the Muhammad. They're looking for the James Cromwellys, the person who says, I want to commit an act of terrorism, but on their own they're unable to, and yet through these sting operations they empower them to become terrorists that on their own they never would. So the primary question I asked in the book, and the theme of this, I guess, is that I think there's a real question now. If you look at all the cases, I don't make the case that there isn't a threat of Islamic terrorism. We can point to cases like Faisal Shahzad and Najib al-Azazi, but I think there's a real question of whether we are creating terrorism, or whether we're creating the terrorists that we fear. Through these sting operations, are we essentially creating this enemy? And I think, obviously that's the case that they're trying to, the defense for Muhammad is making, that, this was basically entrapment. And the interesting thing about this is that, in previous cases, entrapment hasn't worked. There have been 10 defendants who have formally argued entrapment, and they haven't been successful. The government is able, in most of these cases, to make extraordinary logical leaps for predisposition. So when you're arguing entrapment, the government has to prove that you were predisposed to commit the crime. And what the government has successfully done in case after case is put people on the stand who say, well, this person watched a jihadi video, and as a result of that, he self-radicalized, so he became a terrorist. And obviously that's pretty ridiculous, right? I watch jihadi videos, and I'm not going to commit an act of terrorism. I think many people in this room have probably seen a jihadi video. But ultimately, that's what the government is able to use in proving predisposition. And so what we have in the trial going on here is perhaps the best test of whether entrapment will work as a defense in these types of cases because of the circumstances. One, Muhammad was targeted very early. He was 19 years old. And the other, I'm not from Portland, and you guys probably know better than I do, but everyone seems to say that people from Portland are far more skeptical of law enforcement than people in other parts of the country.